movies, cultural products have real power in our society, in any society. And a movie that was this, not just inflammatory in its message, but like technically impressive. People had never seen anything like this before. So you have this spectacle on screen with this very potent message coming at a time in the country where a lot of people are ready to hear it. We should expect it to have a huge impact on how Americans, white Americans in particular, understand themselves and their country.
And part of that first question I asked you about reconcile all the things that this is, you mentioned it. The movies were, I mean, they weren't a little bit shorter. They were much shorter. Two reelers. These were 18, 20-minute films. And here's a 3-hour and 11-minute epic. Close-ups, dissolves, all sorts of things. This is an intensely emotional picture. It's hard to understand how much of an impact this had, what message this sent to Hollywood, this burgeoning little film community, of what they could do. Because technically, it's an incredibly impressive film. And then content-wise, it's repulsive.
That is maybe the most insidious thing about this movie, that because of its technical brilliance, because of its real emotionally powerful storytelling, it's one of the most influential films, period, ever made. And that is tied up very much in its message. The two things can't be neatly disentangled.
Jamel, that's great information. I knew it would be. We'll talk more after we see the film. Here it is from D.W. Griffith in 1915, re-released in 1921. This is The Birth of a Nation.
Meow, and welcome to the second crossover episode of our banned movies discussions. I'm Tonya Todd, representing Femme, and I'm teaming up with my friend Spider Dan of The Secret Boars. Dan, tell everyone what we're doing here.
What are we doing here? So we're having a collaboration, Femme meets Spider Dan and the Secret Boars, and it's kind of a warm-up for your Banned Books Week, which I'm going to be a part of again. Very excited for that and what we're covering. So yeah, instead of looking at books, we're looking at banned movies, banned around the world for various reasons and various genres, various, so many differences. We've got quite an eclectic mix of films, I would say, very, very diversive. This one is a big one, I think.
It is.
In
kind of
content.
Fitting that the four of us last met together to do another book to do a banned book last year that was of significance of the same sort of topic. Like it's in the area.
Yeah.
Isn't that
definitely.
where you met the two of them?
Yes, we are getting the band back together, if you will.
The band,
the band from band camp.
We need to have some levity on this particular episode.
We need it.
It could get very dark. So if we get silly, it's a survival tactic.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, I'm very glad to all be together, and I think we've got the absolute best group of people to talk about this particular topic today.
And we worked well together when we did Invisible Man, so I am glad to see both of you joining Dan and me today. So we will get started right now. I want to have you introduce yourself, Tony. Just give us a bit of background about you and what brings you to the banned movie conversation.
Thank you very much. Tony Holt here. I am a published author, podcaster, and, well, I should say podcast guest, thanks to both you and Spider Dan, as well as a professor at Siena Heights University. And what brings me to the banned movies conversation, much like banned books, I am a big media junkie, especially when it comes to TV and movies. And I love having conversations about pop culture, popular media, and things that are controversial.
Fair enough. Fly, what draws you to the conversation around banned or restricted movies? And then also give us a bit about your background, please.
Okay, so I love film and television. So anything film and television, I'm all over it. Anything banned makes me, the rebel in me, want to find out more. Why is it banned? I went to school for film and television 20 something years ago, and I'm back in the film and television world, and I see certain trends reversing again. So I want to be a part of the conversation, learn, have different insights. And I'm almost finished my first novel.
Very exciting.
Thank you.
And Dan, talk to the audience about why you wanted to do the band movie conversation.
Well, I wanted to work with you again, Tonya. We used to do our She-Hulk podcast, which has had its 3rd year anniversary very recently on Facebook, I saw. So that was nice. So yeah, I thought we worked very well together then. But also, I'm so impressed and in awe of your work with banned books and how I think it's the best thing, one of the best podcast experiences that I've ever had, just listening, let alone being on it.
Oh wow!
And the message, I'm wholly on board with that message. And yeah, I just thought, why not kind of shift gears? And I've covered a lot of controversial stuff or banned stuff previously, so I thought we could kind of just meld the ideas together and find a new way to open up the discussion a little bit more.
And since you are sort of a guest on Femme On right now because you're co-hosting, why don't you explain to our listeners what it is you do on the Secret Boars?
So I mostly kind of look into kind of almost forgotten media, kind of a little bit. There's, things that are kind of maybe 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, like films that have been forgotten or films that are underappreciated, unloved, or the same with comic books as well. Tony's been enjoying our Page of Apocalypse podcast, which is a 30-year-old comic now, still very, very relevant with, again, the world as it is politically, and just kind of enjoying and treasuring and bringing to light stuff that I've always loved or appreciated, or looking at things where, why was this particular film by this big name director not so well received? What went wrong there? Or what's the better of these two similar films? Or, having a friend on to discuss a film that they love but is massively underappreciated and have them defend that. So we have a lot of that. We do kind of weird top fives. Ria Carrigan and myself, we did a top 5 films that feature full frontal male nudity, which was an interesting podcast and one I very much enjoyed. And it didn't quite go where a lot of people were expecting. I think they were expecting a lot of like tee-hee, penis, but it wasn't really that. It was kind of, why is there nudity in this? What's the artistic reason for that? What are they trying to say about this particular, film, story, person, whatever it may be? So yeah, I do weird, wacky, wild, but it's always trying to recontextualize what was going on then, how it affects us now, and kind of bridging that gap.
I just saw a movie that you can add to that list, Waltzing with Brando.
I'll do it.
It comes out next month, and I remember watching it going, oh, Rhea would enjoy this part. And it's not sexual. It's just, swimming. But it's when in Rome, but it's not Rome.
But I mean, they probably did a lot of that in Rome, but
that's true.
But yeah, but it was one I was looking forward to anyway. But now I'm looking forward to it even more.
So let's get back to this particular conversation about banned movies. I'm going to ask our guest questions that you may have heard in the last episode on Spider Dan's show, and then some of the questions will be specific to this particular movie. And so I will address Fly first. What harm, if any, is caused when a movie is banned or censored?
It stops the society of that time frame to have an opinion and have say and looking to have insight into the mindset of a community or a part of the community. So when you ban that book, movie, film, when you censor the idea of thought and conversation, you stop conversation and conversations where healing and understanding happens. So we don't have that if you ban it.
Love that. Tony.
Sorry, I can't get off mute fast enough here. For me, when it comes to banned books, very much to what Fly said, when we ban something, we are denying someone else's perspective. We are missing someone else's perspective and an opportunity, no matter how we feel about it, to discuss, examine, and just better understand how different people think, how different people view the world, especially when it comes to movie and TV. It's a very visual media. We are very visual creatures. Being able to see through the director's eyes, see through someone else's eyes is a great way to connect viscerally, emotionally. And when we ban, we miss out on that conversation, that connection.
So, Tony, are there any benefits to banning a movie? And if so, what are they?
You know, when it comes to benefits, I think very much on the flip side of what I said, because we are such a visually driven species, because things that we see connect so emotionally quickly, it's almost more important to look with, in my opinion, it's more important to look at a critical eye when it comes to movies as to whether or not this is going to have such a visceral impact that maybe we should consider some additional caution with how we show it or when we ban it, right? A great example, there are studies that have found that when our movie Birth of a Nation was screened, lynchings and violence went up for a time after the movie was screened, right? There were actual protests against the movie that came up. There were counter protests for the movie that came up in places where the movie was screened. It was shut down. It was banned in a number of states and cities by mayors because of the fear of the protests that would come, or the violence that would come from the movies. So yeah, just because of who we are as a species, because of who our culture is, while I don't believe in bans in general, when you have something so emotionally resonating, something that can tap into human emotion so easily, it's worth taking a second look, a critical eye, to see what we can do to mitigate the potential impacts.
Fly.
I agree. It depends on the timing. Like, I'm thinking if Birth of a Nation came out just after George Floyd in 2020, after everyone was in the pandemic, it would have been, or after Rodney King, it would have been a gasoline on the fire that was already burning. So then you ban it for that time frame. But to ban it holistically, I don't know. Like, I still think there's a time and a place for certain things. But yeah, that would be the reason why I would say, if I was a mayor or a governor and I knew that my state or city or province was going through a racial reckoning anyway, I would say, yeah, no, you can't. We're not doing it now. I'd ban it for that time frame until I thought relations were better. So there's no life loss.
And we've kind of covered this a little bit, but I just want to ask the question specifically in case you have anything more to add. Can you imagine a scenario where banning a movie is justified? And if so, what are those circumstances? Lai?
If loss of life was imminent and we already saw the effects of that, if like
so not fear of loss of life, but evidence of loss of life.
Yes. Not just before and after. Like, so if I felt like, I believe playing this film 2 hours later there could be more lynchings, I would ban it. I would, because it's not only that lynching, that one lynching, it's the person who witnessed lynching. It's a cause effect that I wouldn't want to have on my watch.
What about you, Tony?
No, I would definitely agree with that. I think that's like I mentioned before, after seeing the evidence of that, and there's always a time lag as to the reporting of the information, how quickly we knew, especially when it comes to Birth of the Nation, if that evidence presented itself. The tangential reports that a murder may have been kind of linked in time to the release of the Birth of the Nation, not necessarily causation, but in a very similar format. If there's potential for loss of life, if there is reported loss of life, then it's worth taking a second look, right? Just a couple of kind of data points. 1910, between 1910 and 1920, the Black American population was about 10%, whereas in about the 2020 census, it's about 12%. In that same time frame, 1910 and 1920, of the places that actually banned this movie: Kansas, 3.2% black population; Ohio, 2 to 3%; St. Louis, 6 to 9%; Pittsburgh, 5 to 6%; Chicago, 2 to 4%; Denver, Minneapolis, 2% or less of a black population. But all of these places took preemptive steps in 1915 to ban this movie because of the potential harm that could be done. I'm not in general a fan of book bans, of movie bans, of that type of censorship, but there's something to be said about the visceral impact this movie had and continues to have, where I'm not sure that was the wrong move.
And so we're talking about banned movies right now. And in general, the four of us are opposed to censorship. And we're usually defending the movies that are on, these types of programs, or the books that are on these types of programs. I didn't want to cover this movie. I just didn't want to expose myself to it. But all three of you thought that it should be included in the series. And we'll start with my co-host. Why did you think this film should be included?
When we first started discussing this, I started thinking about all the films I know that had been banned, and they tended to be the ones that were a bit sexy or a bit abusive or a bit violent, or those are the ones that came to my head, or ones that were linked to crimes in some way or could have inspired certain crimes. And you very rightly so, said there's certain things I will not cover, I will not do, and that's your boundary, and I respect that. So I said, okay, we just won't really look at those, but I'll suggest them. And then if you don't want to do them, or the guests don't want to do them, we won't do them, which is fine by me. And I think we've got a wide variety, and I chose over 150 films with 150 reasons in at least 150 places for us to choose from. So we had a good wide variety. But I did want to do something that was controversial, that was very controversial. And careful what you wish for. Careful what you wish for. Because, I knew this was controversial. I knew it was an important film in a lot of ways, not only for the narrative language of cinema, editing techniques. There is a lot of films that wouldn't be the films they are without this film. However, the messaging within the film is utterly repugnant and disgusting. And that is the dichotomy of that film. There is some positive aspect to it, yet there is all of the horrible things that were caused and a continual causality to this day, to this very day. It's kind of almost fundamental to what America is and what America's identity is, and also kind of what American cinema and cinema around the world is. So I thought it was important for that reason, that it would be potentially the most complicated of films to cover. Again, horrible, disgusting, reprehensible. Pick all the words you want to describe this film. It's all of them. It's absolutely all of them. But I thought, like we've said before, it's important to discuss this. If we ban it, we bury it, then we could have another Birth of the Nation be made and cause even more harm than the first one has and has done. So that's why I thought it was important. And again, clearly our guests found that as well, that we needed to talk about it. We needed to contextualize it for that reason. And in a way, I'm glad they decided to do it. I'm glad you agreed to do it, even though I know it's been upsetting for me. I'm sure it's been upsetting for everybody who's watched it. But I'm still glad to a degree that we are covering it.
Well, thank you for being willing to have the difficult conversation.
Yeah.
So Fly, why did you think it should be included in the series?
The first time I saw the film, I knew the context of what the film was going to be. And I was in film school. So I had heard about it before, didn't go to film school. And I was like, I'm not going to watch it. And then I was in film school, and there was maybe 3% of us were racialized people. and two, if there was only one other woman in the class at the time. And I thought, oh, I'm going to just watch this film and take it for the power of cinema and take the storyline out of it, and I'm not going to be affected. And I braced myself for it, and I couldn't help but be affected. And I think it's the first time I was emotionally charged that way in front of audience of people that I'm not comfortable with. And it reminded me of the power of creativity in cinema and how shot selections and editing is important, but the context and the motivation behind the story is also important, and why those two mediums need to be examined. So that's why we had to talk about it, because I needed to take the power away from the emotion of the horrible context in which he was inspired to use some great film techniques that we use today.
Tony.
So
No, that's brilliant. I'm not sure I can say it any better. I was lucky enough to be able to watch this in the comfort of my own home, and to be able to look at it from a very kind of clinical perspective, if you will. When I had never watched the film, but I had always heard of The Birth of a Nation. I had an idea of what to expect walking into the movie. But at the same time, even I caught myself off guard at some of the scenes and some of the imagery that I didn't expect, right? So many characters, so many white actors playing blackface, beside so many black actors that had no lines, no impact, no effect on the story. So just the stereotypes of the black mammy stereotype, seeing that the dancing Negro stereotype, and just seeing that so crisply portrayed. Like it's laughable how bad it was, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you could still feel it, and realize that, this is the truth of that time. This is what, Griffith, what Dixon wanted people to believe about black people, and why, and part of why they built this movie. So it was caught me off guard, but it was, to Fly's point, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It was great. It was interesting to see those early cinematic techniques that we take for granted now, and their early adaptations and the early usage of it, and then again, to be here and to be part of this conversation, to be able to talk about it with informed individuals and understand why it's still so prevalent, still such a part of the American zeitgeist, that it's still talked about almost 200 years later.
Yeah. And so to that point, Tony, what would you say is the value in watching movies that some might find offensive or controversial?
So like I said, one of the things, especially with this movie, is just the long tail of influence that it's had, both in its use and its misuse, right? Like Fly mentioned, so many of the cinematic techniques that we take for granted now were pioneered by Griffith in this movie. Just trying to look I had a list of all of these different techniques that were used. Close-ups. The first time we see a big use of close-ups. The first time we see such a strong use of emotive acting, the facial expressions of actors, dynamic cross-cutting, kind of flipping between scenes, getting faster and faster and faster to lead up to that climax. The use of test screenings with a test audience to see whether or not a movie is going to work. Moving production to Southern California to really birth Hollywood, right? So many of these things happen, but at the same time, from the minute this movie came out, the KKK, this movie is partly, historians would agree. One of Anthony Slide, a pioneer in research in silent film and early American cinema, has said that this movie probably led to the resurgence of the KKK in 1915. David Duke, 100 years later, used, and potentially the KKK is still using this movie as propaganda, as a recruiting tool, right? I know someone who in the 2000s, this movie was played by one of their teachers in high school, with no conversation, no historical context, just pop the movie in and press play, right? That's the importance. That's how central to the American story this movie is. That is the impact that Griffith and Dixon have had, um, and why I think it's important that you know we have this conversation, not just about Birth of a Nation, but about those banned, offensive, and controversial movies, because you never know how far they're actually going to resonate, and when you actually see that, it's worth breaking down.
And Fly, what's the value in watching movies that people find offensive?
We understand the mindset of those who think this horribly. We need to understand, ironically, and I didn't tie the research of this movie to this thought. I was walking down the road in Florida just a couple weeks ago, and I said to my daughter while she's holding her son's hand, who is taller than his age, and he's only a baby, he's 2, but he looks like he's 4. And they had this guy with watermelon, and I said, you understand why Black people are embarrassed to have watermelon a part of their pictures? Is because it was a good cheap crop that Black people were able to make money off of and profited. And what they decided was, if they changed the narrative and put the narrative of a Black person selling or eating watermelon similar to Birth of a Nation, then people would stay away from it. And you wouldn't want to be proud. You wouldn't want to be a proud watermelon cropper. That's the impact of what the right cut, the right image, the right emotion that we felt watching this film or watching pieces of this film over the years, how it affects how we decide to survive in this world. So we have to have the conversation so we can talk about the real feelings and not move away from it, and then have the conversation with people who don't see the feelings and don't realize, like that teacher that played it and didn't give any context, Tony. That teacher, if you had that conversation, they would have had a different insight and had more wisdom. But if we don't watch it and talk about it, we just re-injure a next generation without having words to the emotions.
And we
Yeah,
won't
it's
go
the
into
wrong
that
kind of
teacher's
ripples.
motivation. Let's be clear,
Right,
we're not going
yeah.
to get into that teacher's motivation.
Right, exactly.
Well, I was going to say, if I think if you're showing this film without context, you are culpable. You are culpable in spreading that message. If you do not give the context for the film, you're spreading the white supremacy.
But
in
like
my
with
opinion.
our trigger fingers, people don't want to be held. A lot of people don't want to be responsible for their bad behavior. There's some people that have the guts to say, yeah, I'm this way. And other people like, I didn't realize. I want those who say they don't realize to either pick a side.
Yeah,
So that's
or the
Sorry,
wonderful phrase, I was just joking. It was just a joke,
there's nothing funny about this. And I need you to sit in the fact that it wasn't funny.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better
The
not have been a
conversations
joke.
that is a counterintuitive to the feelings you're feeling in that dark cinema when you're watching it. That's what the conversation does. It brings light to the film room
Yeah, that's a good point.
and magnifies the editing floor. So I was thinking about the cutting. You never see emotions from any of the Black characters in the movie. When people are getting lit, like you see, well, that's what it is. You deserve it.
Or the only emotions you actually, and I would even challenge that. I would say the only emotions I remember seeing from the Black actors were ones of joy and ones of smiles. Right? You saw them emote when even the white actors in blackface, they would smile when tragedy would fall the white characters. They would smile when they were shuffling and jiving. I remember distinctly the first time you see a group of Black actors together, the first time you see a group of Black people, when they pull them out of the fields in one of the early scenes, when they're sitting there eating the watermelon, when they're shuffling and shucking and jiving, all smiles, right? But even when the fighting starts toward the end of the movie, as they reach the climax of the fighting, they're not zooming in. The only actors you see that emote are the white actors in blackface. You don't see the Black actors getting close-ups. You don't see the Black actors zooming in and seeing their actual emotion as they're acting, right? When the violence ensues, you see the actual Black actors being violent. I distinctly remember when they were breaking into the Southern landowner's house. There was one Black actor with a tattered uniform and a rifle, just looking crazed. And that's like it. That's the emotion you get.
Where they
That was done on
violated that
purpose.
table in every possible way, like
Hmm.
just the bizarreness of what are they even doing, you know? Like
Yeah.
even this, they're trying to make people seem so ridiculous. Just they don't even know how to ravage a home properly, you know, just even that. Like it was so ridiculous. Like, oh, they really hate that table, you know?
It's funny. When I saw the smiles, I didn't see them as an emotion. I saw them as a uniform of how you have to strip your humanity. So that's why the angry black woman or the angry black man or all those things, those tropes have been put out, is because we're only allowed to put on the uniform of smiling through the problems, through the pain, through the atrocities, and you're not allowed to do anything else. And then even black people then look at a black person who shows their emotion as not the right person, because they've also digested the birth of the nation, whether they want to or not.
Mm. I love that. I love that. It reminds me of the Black Star song, "Thieves in the Night," right? Not strong, only aggressive. Not free, we're only licensed. Not compassionate, only polite.
You know, I have to just say, this brought me back to the last time I met you guys for the first time. Thank you, Tonya, for this experience. You always bring a good soundtrack to the story, Tony. Like,
Professor Tony.
exactly, Professor Tony. Thank you so much. While this topic is not something that I'm enjoying talking about, thank you for having me as a guest and bringing me back. It was my first podcast ever when we spoke the last time, and it's important to have conversations with people who take this type of thing seriously and want to change the narrative. And I'm honored to be on the panel with all of you.
I'm gonna jump
We're
on that train
privileged
as
to have
well.
you.
Dan and Tanya, every podcast I'm on is an opportunity to be with an informed group of people, and I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
I like to surround myself with my betters. Only makes me better. So thank you all for doing this as well.
Sorry, I'm feeling emotional and grateful for all of you.
Same.
I think we all feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we press on?
Let's go.
Okay. Some movies that are banned today were not controversial when they were first released, but are now facing backlash for contemporary reasons. Does the era in which a film was made affect how you view its censorship or banning? Start with Fly.
Most definitely. Like this film right now, if they had banned it then, we would have more lives saved based on the data that Tony mentioned. If they ban it now, then we don't learn the lessons of the past that have caused us to where we are today. So the era it's quintessential to having the right insight. So I wouldn't have banned this book. I wouldn't have banned this movie now, because I need to learn the lessons of what caused why we're here today. Its impact has affected all cinema, advertising, and how we see ourselves, and why we're David Duke. What's the other one? Anthony Sly. Like they've influenced them, and they've used that playbook. So how do we counteract that playbook without knowing their source? So yeah, the era does matter.
Tony.
I'm not sure I can say it any better than that. I think that we should be judging. Well, I absolutely think we should be judging and critical of the material based on our present day perspectives. In a different time, different things were acceptable, right? And even still, even in 1915, there were still voices of opposition toward this, right? The NAACP arranging boycotts and protests against these movies. Jane Addams, something I learned, one of the historical figures in social work, women's suffrage, founder of Hull House in Chicago. She was one of the early voices and warned that the film would appeal to racial prejudices and would misuse history, right? Even early voices were speaking out against this. But I think Fly said it the best, right? If it was banned now, we would miss the conversation. If it was banned then, we may have saved more lives, but we still wouldn't get to the point where we know what's going on, why it's happening, and be able to prevent it in the future.
And now, how much weight should be given to a filmmaker's intent versus a viewer's interpretation when discussing the merits or dangers of banning a movie? And I feel like that is relevant to this movie in particular. Tony.
Yeah, I am not sure that either Griffith or Dixon, who was the author of the book and the play The Klansman, I'm not sure that either of them left any room for interpretation, right? They were both Southerners, both had Confederate family and service members, both negatively viewed the period of Reconstruction, and they both made that clear in their book, their play, and their movie, right? I'm not sure that there's room for interpretation here. In general, I think that when an artist releases their work, regardless of what that artist wanted it to be, it is the viewer, it is the audience that final say is the wrong word, but the viewer perspective, the audience perspective, I think that counts equally, if not more, as to how that work is received. That being said, again, with such a visual media like movies, the perspective of the director, of the screenwriter, that comes through really, really clearly. And The Birth of a Nation, again, Griffith and Dixon left little room for interpretation of their perspective.
Why?
So, like Tony said it, but it was also played at the White House. Like, who funded this film? It was 18,000 people was the highest cast of the era, and they were able to move it to Southern California. I wanted to know who wrote those checks, so I need to know I do need to know the intent of the filmmaker. Yes, the viewer is ultimately responsible, but if the financiers are not there, you can't mass market your swill and your hate. So the viewer is ultimately responsible for not allowing them to recoup their money, but the mindset of like Griffith, he didn't he wouldn't even care what I thought, really.
Mm.
Well, he didn't care. Like, this was, it wasn't like when it came out, he was like surprised by the reaction to the film. Some people loved it, some people hated it for obvious reasons. But he knew what he was doing. It was 50 years after the Civil War ended. Does that ring a bell to somebody? Like, there's a reason he's doing this. He and Dixon got Woodrow Wilson in the White House, and he was seen as quite a progressive president. But actually, he was also the son of a Confederate general or colonel. All of them were. Dixon even suggested changing the name to Birth of a Nation for it to get wider appeal. And Dixon got Wilson in the White House. Like, they're already busy mates. They use a quote from Woodrow Wilson's book about the Civil War in the film just to get him on board. And he said, he was quoted in saying, it's like writing history with lightning, and that's terrifying. And when the bad reaction came out, Woodrow Wilson backed way off. But Griffith didn't. He pushed it. He tried to get it. He said if we can get it through Boston, which there was a massive kind of Booker T. Washington and Du Bois, they all pushed for this ban. But he said if I can get it through Boston, I can get it anywhere. Basically, so he knew what he was doing. It's premeditated. It's not him just going, whoopsie, I did a racist film by accident. No. But even after the film, this is the thing, even after the film, he made a sequel called Intolerance. And you would think, he was like, maybe I've learnt my lesson, or maybe I shouldn't have made this film. Maybe I made a mistake. No, he was doubling down. So he felt he was being treated. He thought people were being intolerant of him. So much so he was like, well, I'm going to show in my next film, my next 3-hour epic that bankrupted him, apparently, all the intolerance through history that has occurred in various kind of an anthology film, which I won't be watching because I don't care for it after this one. But like that just shows you his mentality. And I think they released it in 1930, and Walter Houston did like a little intro. They did like a little intro, like acted it out, and talked about Birth of the Nation. And he's talking about that the Klan was needed and all this other stuff. But he does not even address the controversy or anything about it, because they're fucking re-releasing it. They're putting it in the cinema again. After all of that, 15 years later, again, they're putting it out with no issue and with no context yet again.
Even between the release of Birth of the Nation and Intolerance, during, I think it was like the second run of Birth of the Nation, it was either like 1917 or 1919, when they added that title card that was a plea for the art, right? We do not fear censorship. That was an addition that, again, was just like you said, Griffith doubling down on and trying to kind of manipulate the story in his favor, right? Tying himself to Shakespeare and other great writers who wrote in controversy. Like this is like his retelling of history was some controversial thing that must be grounded in the freedom of expression in the arts. It's like, nah, dude. No, we know it's clear what you were trying to do. Come on.
I mean, he's clearly
I
proud
found
of
that
the film.
offensive.
Yeah,
Like, I found that title card offensive. I was like, oh my gosh.
He's so proud of it. His name is on every title card. He's so proud of it.
Every single one.
Everyone.
Actually, I misspoke. He doesn't care about how I feel. He's glad that I was hurt.
Yeah,
So that's a part of the evil.
That's it. No, you're right. You're right. That's it.
It's a part of the evil of like, if you can film the lynching scene and then cut to people smiling, you don't care that I'm hurt and injured by that. So it was successful as far as he's concerned. That's why he did the second run. And was I can't remember when they screened it at the White House. Wasn't that in the second run? When afterward rolled.
No, it was before. It was before the film even was released, because they needed
pre-release.
They needed the
test
press.
screen.
Yeah, but
that's what they used to get it into all the other places. Hey, we screened it at the White House. Oh, well, okay. I guess it can't be that bad.
The first ever film to be screened at the White House.
And if we think about what's happening at the White House now, it's apropos that.
I'm surprised we haven't seen a screening of it again at the White House.
Well, it's still early. It's only the first year.
Oh, don't remind me.
I feel like Martin Luther King Day might be the day.
Oh no!
Right?
Oh, come on!
No.
But if you look at all the things that he's banning and all the things that all the propaganda that he's supporting, this is in line with.
It's just this week he said, "Let's stop. Why do we keep talking about slavery all the time? It's woke. Why are we talking about slavery all the time?" This week, Not only that, I think in Seattle there was a black disabled veteran who was approached by a white man, and he said, "You're not a real veteran," and he said, "Yes, I am." He took a gun out and he shot him in broad daylight. That happened this week. Like that's in the.
Did not see that.
He survived. Luckily, he survived. I think it happened late July, but now he's out of the hospital. He survived. He lived, but he was shot in broad daylight in Seattle just for saying he was a veteran, and somebody said that's a lie.
Just the levels of audacity there.
And those things happened within the week. You know, I have this kind of curse as part of my podcast. I know this is on mine, but I have what I call the zeitgeist curse, which every time I cover something, there's something either pops up that's relevant or somebody dies who was in it. And I think there's nothing more relevant than this at the moment.
Apparently, I need a little comfort.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say a good comfort book. If you are looking to if you have watched this, which it's up to you, it is absolutely up to you. But if you have watched this, you need a palate cleanse. I recommend a comic book called Superman Smashes the Klan. So this is about it's a 40s set, late 40s set Superman story where he's still finding out his powers and what he can do. He can only leap. He doesn't have all the ice stuff or the freeze breath or anything. And he's trying to stop a group called the Clan of the Fiery Cross. What Wonder who they could be. And it is actually based on a true story. So there was a reporter in the 40s where the Klan was having their second resurgence, and they were using the media. They were on Time magazine. They were having interviews, all this sort of stuff. And they were growing and they were getting more powerful. And this reporter went undercover, learned all about them, went to the authorities, went to the government, went to the police. But he found that they did not care, because most likely they either believed in the message or they were members of the Klan themselves. But what was popular at the time as well as the Klan was Superman, the radio show. One of the most popular shows at that time, introduced all sorts of things that we still hold in the Superman lore, like kryptonite and Perry White and all sorts of kind of cool little add-ons to the Superman lore. He went to them and he said, I've got a story for you. And what he did is he used his research and put all the kind of without it being the Klan, he put all of their kind of practices, their ideas, what they believed, their, rituals, you name it, all within these scripts of this radio show. And there is research to suggest that radio show made the Klan recruitment drop down to zero, a flat zero, which is what this comic is inspired by. Also written by the leads in the story in the original radio show and in this comic are Chinese Americans, and yeah, it's a wonderful comic. It's for young ages. It's a young adult book. Some very really well done complex ideas that they're attacking, and yeah, really entertaining. Great artwork. Highly recommend. I've not listened to the radio show, but I think that's I think we need a little bit of hope, I think, at the moment, and Superman does that best.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So check it out.
Especially
Check it
relevant with the way people are responding to the latest Superman movie, calling it too woke, when it's like, this stuff has been around since the beginning of Superman.
Really?
Yeah.
These are not new things.
See, I had not heard that, and I was not interested in the new Superman movie. Now I'm going to go watch it.
Yes, please do it.
Now I'm going to go see
it. I definitely heard they were upset that he was a good person. That
Right.
he is a good person.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Kind
He
of a
has super
thing.
morals. I don't know.
He's kind. Oh my God. When did that go out
How
of
dare
fashion?
you be kind?
Shocker. Shocker.
But yeah, so I just wanted to throw that in there. And we've had films that have been direct responses to Birth of the Nation. So Reginald Hudlin, who produced Django, Quentin Tarantino's film, he said Django was a response to Birth of the Nation. Spike Lee's Black Klansman that I watched today, another excellent film, was again a direct response to that film as well. So yeah, I would definitely check those out as well if you haven't seen them.
DJ Spooky's documentary Rebirth of a Nation, where he remixes scenes from The Birth of a Nation. Another one to check out.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm up for that. But that's going on my list.
I was surprised, if I may, along with palate cleansers, I was surprised to learn that Griffith was one of the early founders of United Artists Films. United Artists, the production and distribution company that has made some of my favorite movies, some award-winning movies. Yeah, really. Raging Bull, La Cage aux Folles, the original French film that inspired The Birdcage, one of Robin Williams' best movies. Clash of the Titans, Swamp Thing, one of the early popular comic book movies. Tank Girl, a household favorite. The Secrets of Nim, All Dogs Go to Heaven, one of the movies I've actually cried for. Love that movie. War Games won an early winner. What was that? Matthew Broderick, one of his early roles. Love that movie. I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, one of the Wayans brothers' most popular movies by United Artists, right?
Right.
Hotel
but
Rwanda.
He was dead by then.
It was, thankfully.
Thankfully, he financed something that was going to live past his evil.
Right? Oh. So yeah, go watch those UA films. Hotel Rwanda with Don Cheadle. James Bond films, including The World Is Not Enough with the greatest Bond girl ever, Halle Berry. Hello?
Oh no, she's Die Another Day. Die Another Day she's in.
Is it Die Another Day? I thought it was The World Is Not Enough with Pierce Brosnan.
No, that's Denise Richards and the other woman. Can't remember.
I like how Dan's like,
Dan.
I know my Bond girls.
Apparently.
I stand corrected. I stand corrected. Thank you.
No, it's all right. I'm not a massive fan of Bond. I just know that.
I just know the Bond girls.
You Bond women and their titles.
maybe I just follow Halle Berry's filmography. Maybe I just purely that.
As well you should.
Yes,
as well you should. So say we all.
Oh dear. Oh, needed that.
Yes. So you have endless trivia about things, Dan.
Sure, I do.
Tell us why Birth of a Nation was banned officially. Like, what were the official reasons and what did you find? I know we talked about it in some of the conversation here, but I want to make sure that we cover the research that you did.
Yeah, of course. So Tony's already mentioned some of the places it was banned. So it was not given a ban throughout the US. So it's still seen quite wildly. The first reel, in fact, was so popular that it was destroyed through so many viewings. So they had all the copies we see now are not the original. So they're all copies of copies of copies. So they had to make several new reels, which is, again, terrifying. But yeah, it was banned, unsurprisingly, for its racist content and romanticized portrayal of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. And it was banned in Chicago, Las Vegas, Denver, Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Ohio, Kansas, and West Virginia. There was an unsuccessful attempt that I mentioned earlier to ban it in Boston that was led by William M. Trotter, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, who we talked about last time, and the NAACP. So unsurprisingly, as controversial as the film is now, it is no less controversial then, as we've mentioned, and its portrayal of black people and its portrayal of the KKK and the heroic, it's all like it almost made me feel like it was like almost like a Batman film, they're inspired by some children playing with a bedsheet and scaring black children away.
Right.
And it was like, that's the inspiration. That's it. I've figured it all out. We just need to dress all in white, like ghosts. And that was kind of somewhat, there's some truth to that, because they would, change their voices. They'd have a deep voice or a lower voice, and they pretend to be ghosts of fallen Confederate soldiers and things like that. But originally, the group was actually not even a white supremacist group. It was a fraternity, a brotherly fraternity that used to party. They were quite educated, and the Ku Klux Klan name comes from, I think it's closing circle, which is Greek or Latin. So they were educated, but it slowly became what we see in the film. The black characters doing is what the KKK were doing, like stifling votes, stopping people from voting, black people especially from voting, trying to keep the South white, and the violence and various other things. But originally it was kind of just pranks, again, but it just developed into the vehement hatred that we see today in those kind of groups. Terrifying, but kind of an unsurprising kind of reason. I think we've had a few kind of surprising reasons for bannings, or will have this month already, but I think this one is kind of...
Well, definitely through banned books, we've had some very, animals
odd
that talk.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Clutch my pearls, oh no. What someone think of the children?
In a kids movie? Like, have you read any children's books? Like, that does not feel like a reason to ban a book. Like,
surely all cartoons ever, anything, Disney's
Right.
banned, everyone's banned, nobody can see anything anymore. No. It's an effrontery to God itself, God themselves, to have talking animals. Oh dear. But yeah, that is the reason, and again, pretty unsurprising given what is portrayed in the film.
So, Fly, I want to ask this next question of you first because of your filmmaker background and your film study background. How should we approach The Birth of a Nation as both a historical artifact and a work of cinema?
So we look at the shot selection and the editing, and so how we've not allowed space for the Black characters to have any other emotion, like Tony mentioned, and the smell. So that then shows why it's unrealistic. And then you use the historical context to say, these editing now deceives and lies. I find it funny when they put it on the ban list because of the portrayal of lynching and everything else. But really, if they had said that the lynchings were evil and wrong, but were doing it anyway, would they have banned it? Because then it'd be historically accurate because it did happen. So if we're going to look at it as a film work, then when we show those editing and seeing people smile after somebody they were just standing beside got lynched, that would be inaccurate. So then we show that, and we show how the power of cinema and why certain shot selections and editing tools, and the fact that it's a silent film is, I think, even more eerie because it's within your own geist. It's not someone's voice that's lulling you into it. I mean, the first hour, the music does kind of lull you into this transient state of this is a utopic world, and that's why you ever see everybody happy until the gruesome starts happening about 45, 50. And by that, then you're already in the world. So I think you look at how the storytelling and the editing techniques and the shots, the zooming in of people whose feelings care, that's who gets the most screen time, that type of thing. That's how we use it as a film artifact, and then understand the power of the tool that we've been given the opportunity and grace to do so easily now. It's different then. No one's watching a movie for 3 hours and 30 minutes right now in one sitting, unless you're streaming like a series where you get a break. But then you kind of trance somebody in. Like they're in this dark cinema watching it for 3 hours. You can't even investigate a criminal for that long. They have to get a break because it does something to their psyche. So I think that's the type of aspects of the film I would be looking at it. As a writer, I feel like the story is always the paramount part of film, and then the editor can affect the story.
And the music too. Like I feel like the music was used effectively.
And I think it was the first time they used music in a lulling type of desensitizing emotional aspect. Like I don't think like that music's still playing in my head. It's gonna take a long time for the music.
And
it's hypnotic,
that's the thing. Like it's upsetting because some of those songs are very familiar. They used familiar songs where people already have emotions connected to those songs, and then they put it over this story to make you have those positive emotions over these horrible things.
So you're connected to the positive, and you want to be a part of the power of that. And then if you're the victim that's getting lynched on the screen, then you have a dichotomy to your own self and your own emotions. Mm-hmm. You're detached. And then how do you become a productive member in your family or be able to tap into those emotions when you're in conflict? And that's the deception of this movie. And I think that's why it should have been banned for me. If you're going to have the lynching, you're going to have all that stuff, have it. But say what it is. Don't say it's a good thing and people wanted it and it caused problems. Say what it is.
Or a just thing.
Or a just thing. The just thing really disgusted me.
Yeah. Tony.
I'm not sure if I answered the question, but
you did. And Tony, I want your perspective too. And just a reminder, because we went kind of off, how should we approach this movie as a historical artifact and a work of cinema?
Well, aside from the fact that this is that Fly makes a really, really great argument for the next Avengers feature to have an intermission at about 90 minutes. That would be nice for everyone. Not that I don't love the Avengers, but 3 hours, give me a break. Give me a break, literally and figuratively. But to your question, I think I'm not sure I can say it better than Fly. We approach this with caution and with a clear-eyed assessment of fact versus fiction, of dramatic license versus political agenda, right? Griffith's when they re-released the movie, Griffith, making the plea for the arts and how we do not fear censorship when this wasn't about censorship in the first place. It was about you retelling history and changing revising history to fit your narrative, right? Making sure that we ask about the creator's purpose and what they were trying to do with this film versus the impact that it's actually having on the audience, on the country, on the nation, right? And then again, looking at the, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, looking at what technically was innovative things that happened without separating it from the emotion from the negative impact that it had. USC in a 2015 NPR article, USC film school professor Todd Boyd has a great quote that I just had to take straight from him. You can't separate the technological prowess from the political baggage. That says it all to me, and it should be. I firmly believe it should be examined in that way.
And that leads me to my last question. It feels like kind of an answer to that. How do we reconcile the film's influence on cinematic technique with the real world harm it contributed to, including its role in the resurgence of the KKK? Do you have more to add to that, Tony?
I mean, again, I think I said it earlier, right? 1950 to 1970, using this all the way up into the 2000s, this movie's still being played as a recruiting tool for the KKK, for white supremacy. The history, the revisionist history, the world that could have been. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure I could say it any differently. You can't separate the technological prowess from the political baggage. Just something that I didn't pick up on until I had finished watching the movie. The way in which Griffith used color tinting, right? The red hues for all the violent scenes, the blue hues for the peaceful lulling times, right? Think about when The Matrix came out and everybody talked about that weird green tint that The Matrix had. Would we have seen that if it wasn't pioneered by Griffith? Think about all those quick cut action scenes we see in our favorite action movies. The dynamic cross cutting that just leads you heart pounding to that climax. Would we have that without The Birth of the Nation? I love those things. Those are some of the key pieces of movies, some of the key tools and techniques in movies that have made me fall in love with movies over my whole life. But I can't. And while you have to give Griffith credit for that, I can't give him credit for this movie, and I can't separate what he was trying to do, what his message was with this movie, from the fact that he brought all these innovations forward. You can't separate the technological prowess from the political baggage.
But do you
Why?
have to? I don't think you have to. One
No,
of the
ma'am.
things that
No, ma'am.
my professor and film editor taught me was that this is why when someone challenges your shot selection, you understand the power of what he did and the influence. So then you say, well, look, this is why he did that. And it worked. Because for you who is totally opposed to the message of this film, you were still at peace when the lynching wasn't on, when the blue screens were on. Your heart wasn't racing. You weren't tight. And everybody deserves some joy sometimes and peace and relaxation. So even though I felt like I should have been charged the whole when he gave me a break, I took it in emotion. So you can't. I don't think you do. I think you use it as a tool to understand the power of the influence of the medium.
Well said.
Dan,
Well
do you have
said.
anything to add to that?
I don't think so, really. I think they both said it very, very well. I think, yeah, I think it's insidious. I think it's just subversive. Like, you know, I'm sure some right-wing people will say some film is subversive or tainting the youth or some stuff, but this is that. This is the thing that offends me most, is when I can put up with all the violence, all the sex, whatever ideas challenging, but this for me is the most despicable, when you are presenting something which is abhorrent as something that is just, it is fine, it is cool, it is appropriate, it is normal. That's when I have a problem. I think this is the first film I've come so close to thinking I should ban. I think I'm on like the hair's edge where I'm like, it's that disgusting that I'm like, again, I don't think I would ban it, but it's as close as I think I've come to a film that I would say deserves banning. And he knew what he was doing. He knew. It's not like he made a mistake or he miscalculated. And today we talk about separating the art from the artist. There's various people that get cancelled for whatever reasons, Do you go back and watch their films? Are you comfortable doing that? Does it taint it? Are you going to watch any of their new stuff? That's a decision for you to make, whether you do or whether you don't separate them. But that's the complexity of this film. Is, like Tony was saying, we don't have the cinema we have without these techniques, and that's why the film still is powerful. If somebody sees this and doesn't know the context, it's, it could be seen as a rip-roaring adventure, or a Civil War film, or, you could misinterpret this because it is using those techniques, and it can, Ride of the Valkyries, as they come riding in, the cavalry comes riding in. That's the moment you're supposed to be like, yes, here they come to save everybody. But that's not the truth. That's not the history. That's not the fact. But the film wants you to feel like that. It wants you, and it's using all the tools that Fly's mentioned to evoke that emotion and that feeling. It wants you to feel triumphant. And I think that, again, is the most just abhorrent thing of it all, is that you are forcing a particular view and a particular perspective on people that know the truth. But we also have to remember, this is probably the first real film that people saw, because it wasn't just in screens. They would take it to, out into the sticks and have very cheap tickets and show people in the Deep South, show people wherever, to inspire that, to get that.
Right. It
that
was
message.
Intended as a piece of propaganda.
Yeah. This is the first time the word propaganda and the word film have ever been put together in a sentence. And it's accurate, because that is what it is. And it's powerful. It's still, if you didn't know the context of this, you could get wrapped up in it quite easily, I think. I think the way it's done, yes, some of it is old and, a bit quaint and stuff like that. But I think, if you put this in front of a child and they didn't know, you could show them 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Obviously, they're not going to sit there for 3 hours. But if they don't know the context, it is a volatile and dangerous piece of art.
And that being said, I just wanted to say that, though, is antiquated and quaint, but this is Karenism's Bible.
Yeah.
The daughters in that story, when you say insidious, it's the most, I will now say insidious propaganda, the first of its kind. That's what I'm going to say when I hear of Birth of a Nation. Thank you for that. Because the Karenism and Emmett Till was years later. But it's the same type of mindset. Why he was killed is why they did
Yeah.
That sounds like a title for this one: Insidious Propaganda, the first of its kind. I like that.
Yeah, that's if I ever have to speak on this again, I will refer to this podcast and say thank you all for giving me a different language to the hurt and the pain of the magnetism used so evilly. 100%. I know that's not a word, but either was the story that he told us.
It didn't need to say a word. That was the power of the cinema. That was the power of film, the power of his techniques. He didn't need to say a word. He would show it, and that's it. And again, some people have seen this as a documentary, when it's absolutely revisionist history, as we've said. But some people will go, this is it. This is the truth. You might, there's films that you go, oh, Gladiator wasn't real, and that's fine. That's ancient Rome, and I know what Gladiator is. But this, you absolutely need to know the context, and you need to know the history before you walk into this.
I think that's the danger right there, is it's being presented as the truth. There are plenty of revisionist history movies out there that are entertaining and don't cause a problem, because we all know that's not what actually happened. This is just what someone wished happened. But this is being presented as, oh no, this is real. This is true. They doubled down and said, I'm sorry if you can't understand it because you're Black. We're actually your friend. We're just showing you what actually happened. And it's lies.
But in a vacuum, which was what the current administration is trying to do, it will be the only truth standing. And I say truth with
quotes.
with insidious propaganda quotes and
Yeah. So, Fly, do you have any final thoughts about banned movies or this movie in particular that you want to share before we wrap up?
This movie, while it is hateful and arrogant, it is the blueprint for us to know how to change the narrative. So the same way they used the cut techniques and the zoom ins to show emotion, we have to show the right emotions. So the truth of the matter is always going to stand, hold truth, and always stand if we tell the stories. So continue to tell the stories and use the techniques that he taught us.
Tony.
Yeah, here. I think Fly said it best. Yeah, we got to continue to tell the stories, all of the stories, right, for both the majority and the minority. All of the stories from history and current events, from all of the different perspectives, and to pull at the heartstrings of our brethren, all over the world, to connect with, understand, and bridge whatever divide there is, so we can have these conversations, and get to know each other better, protect, and get to understand that there is more that connects us than separates us. There's more that is the same than different.
Dan, any final thoughts?
It's yeah. I'm still kind of speechless, kind of, as much as I've talked, and I have talked a lot today. I'm still kind of speechless and flabbergasted by.
You heard it here first, Mr. Prattle.
I know, right?
It's out of prattle.
There's no preparing for prattle today. It's just, yeah. I think it is important for it to be seen. Again, I know I'm on the borderline to banning it, but I think Fly especially is right. I think it is important to see. It's important to talk about. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing this now, today, in the world that we live in. You know, my country, the UK is not too far off from where America is, to be honest. We're a hop, skip, and a jump away to that sort of thing. There's currently gangs roaming looking for immigrants to protect their towns. They are painting flags on buildings and on walkways. The St. George's flag, which has been used again. The idea of flags, we see the Confederate flag in this. So it is 100% relevant and an important thing to talk about, and it should be seen, and it is widely available on YouTube. There's various versions you can watch, because it's in the public domain. But yeah, I think I'm again, I know it's been a difficult conversation for all of us, but I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad we did it together. And I think it was important to talk about in this way. But yeah, I think this is arguably the most important conversation or podcast I've ever had. I think, much like the banned books, I think. So I'm very grateful to be a part of it, and to have such wonderful and intelligent people to discuss it with. But yeah, I again, it gets 2 thumbs down from me as a film. But yes, again, I can see its benefits, but I can also see the evil, for lack of a better word, that it's caused.
Mm-hmm.
The insidious propaganda.
Yeah, it's the birth of racism and insidious propaganda. That's what I would call it. That would be the new title. Because we're Canadians and we're right beside each other. And if you see the stuff that's going on, like everyone says, "Oh, Canada's different." No,
it's happening everywhere. It's happening in Europe. It's happening here in
it's
the
a global
UK.
issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said, the restricting of information, and even this week as well. I think the Texas is changing their borders.
Mm-hmm.
So
the voting.
With the voting, and again, that was kind of a big thing in the Civil War, states' rights and the overall the union's rights. So again, still incredibly relevant.
And that's the shame of it all. It's all still incredibly relevant.
Yeah. We haven't learned anything.
Well, I do want to thank all of you for having this challenging conversation, and thank you for making it a safe space for everyone here. Fly, tell us where people can find you and support the work that you do.
I'm on Instagram. I'm going to be having a Substack coming out after the Toronto International Film Festival this year. That's what I'm first time accredited writer for the film festival, so I'm quite excited about that. So Flying HT, thank you. And I do contribute to this podcast, helping me push the envelope and have my opinion out there. So you'll see me more. So thank you all for making this a safe space, an important conversation, and some healing after watching such a insidious racist propaganda tool.
One more time, your handle. You said it very fast.
Oh, Fly in HD at Instagram. And that'll be it.
So
Like
me
you said
the,
a lot of stuff. You're like,
doing
you're like, fly issue. You said it so fast. Like, yeah.
a little sigh and doing the
hey, Tonya, give her a break.
motion.
It's only a second podcast, all right? She'll get used to this. She'll get used to this.
Just want to give her an opportunity to say it again. You know, if people are driving and listening, they're like, what did she say?
Well, if
Fly
you are
HD.
driving and listening, I'm going to put it in the show notes as well. So after you've listened, go back, and I'm sure Fly will send me the link for the Substack as well, and I'll include that in the show notes too.
I will. Thank you.
Tony, where can people find you and support your work?
Easiest place to find me right now is my Linktree site. It's Tony Holt Jr. That's linktr.ee/Tony Holt Jr. TonyHoltJr. You'll find there most of the works that I've been a part of, the many podcasts with you and Dan that I've done. As soon as I get the link for this one will be up there as well. So if you want to hear more from me, go there. You'll also find the Comics Lit Volume 1 for sale, where I have my first published work, an essay about Black Panther and Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man.
And Dan?
You can find me at spiderdanandthesecretballs.com. Don't forget, I've not mentioned this on our other recording, but please remember to alternate. So if you want to hear the whole month, you've got to go to Femme and you've got to come over to me. So you've got to do both. So we're going to alternate each week, 4 podcasts. Start with me, come here, go back to me, go back to Femme for the finish line. I've told people about this before and they don't listen. They're like, where's that podcast, Dan? Where's that podcast? You told me they're doing a podcast. I was like, yes, you have to... You have to. We're trying to. It's the melding. We're trying to pass the audience over. Like, come on, like get with it. So that's why I'm mentioning it now.
We're trying to share the love.
Share the love. Share the love. Share the experience. Again, wonderful conversation. And again, couldn't think of better people to talk to about this topic.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. This has been a Femme and Spider Dan and the Secret Boars collaboration. Please like, share, subscribe to both podcasts, and we'll see you next time.